It's gone. I'll call to order the planning board meeting for Tuesday, October 14th, 2014. We have a new planning board member, Libby here. Welcome aboard. Anybody here to speak on anything that is not on the agenda? All right. I guess let's skip ahead to start the public hearing. All right, so you want to move to open the public hearing?
I move to open up the. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's
get a motion from ordinance.
Motion to open the public hearing from board meeting.
All right. So this is the draft bylaw amendment with respect to the accessory apartments. You guys have a look at it, right? Any questions, comments?
Actually, I think we moved it forward through the subcommittee already with 3-0 approval.
Okay. Anybody on the planning board have any comments, questions? No?
It's ready to go.
Anybody from the public here to speak on the amendment of the accessory apartment bylaw? All right. Then.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oh, yep.
Go ahead.
Can you just give us
I
your name
don't-
real quick?
Pardon?
Your name real quick.
Iris Whedon, 20 Park Street. I don't have the agenda.
A copy?
Oh.
Here, take a look at that.
Can pass this around too in case someone's hasn't seen
So just to say, we have an historic barn on our property that's really lovely, and we really would like to preserve it, and it would be really helpful if it's something that we could potentially rent and get money back from having. It would take a lot a lot of money to put in to the property to, get electricity and things like that. So it would just be very helpful to be able to potentially rent it out at some point. We're stuck right now.
Yeah, that's sort of the general idea of the bylaws, to make it a little easier for people to have accessory apartments. There's limitations in the bylaw there about the square footage and certain restrictions on how you would go about that and when you can go about that, but that's sort of this general scenario where the proposed bylaw would hopefully help you.
So it's only, can it be other businesses as well?
No, it's just residential units. Yep.
Hi, Dan Hagan from the City Council. I just came down really to get more information. I certainly think increasing the size is a good idea. I think 10% was kind of very restrictive. I guess I have a little concern about the detached, because I think, one of the master plan things is character in neighborhoods, and I don't think the ordinance really talks about the setting of the building. I mean, I know it says it's supposed to keep the characteristics, but can you set a building, say someone has a large backyard, could they set the building quite a ways from their house, but on the minimum back to the neighbor, and essentially put a new small house on a residential lot in whatever district? I guess those are some of my concerns with how this is actually going to work, because again, it's kind of a big change of characters of neighborhoods, because this is every district, as I recall, every residential district from large to small. And I guess when somebody's apartment or an apartment, these were traditionally I guess you used to call them in-laws apartments or whatever, that was it. And this is obviously, I think you could, even now, if you had attached, you can rent to someone else. But I mean, then you do sort of, the style of the addition or whatever is all within keeping of the single-family home, assuming you're in a single-family home neighborhood. And by allowing basically a separate building of up to 800 square feet, I mean, that can be a small two-bedroom ranch that could be placed in a lot of different areas. I guess I have a few concerns. Again, I kind of just was here a little more for information. I know you guys vetted it and if any of this came up, of what type of restrictions there are for placing it. I know a lot of houses, maybe say you're in a 25 or 15 zone, will put the house on 15 here, and maybe they got enough room to put another, and again, you could actually add homes, maybe that's part of the what you guys were looking at, I guess. It's the siting of it, and I think attached just seems to really vest the owner. They still have the ability of, adding a rental to their property, but it's within their confines of their living space, not a separate unit, which is almost adding small apartment buildings throughout the zone. When you talk to this woman, I don't know her, when you start talking barns, that's a whole different, again, I haven't really even contemplated that, but I know it's in the ordinance, but that makes a little bit more sense if something's already on site and it's just a matter of renovating it. I wouldn't necessarily think that would be particularly a bad idea, again, assuming it's got the footage, but again, just a few of my ideas that I
Yeah, you want to speak to them?
So, I mean, Dan, one thing, if you look at G, I hear you, I think it doesn't make sense to allow people to build an extra house on their lot, in a lot of places, but, this says that it should be clearly subordinate part of the single-family dwelling. So I think that kind of addresses the concern of building a ranch on, just away from the house. And, in our deliberations, what we were looking at was existing buildings where people are looking to have either an income or a place for their kids to stay, or an in-law apartment, and that was the spirit of how we approached it.
And I would consider, again, pre-existing structures such as garages or barns where, a student might be coming back from college and the parents decide to put in a shower or something like that, and efficiency kitchen or something.
Yeah, and I think in our discussions on the planning board, it came to us from somebody with a pre-existing external separate building, and that seemed to be sort of the benefit from allowing that is pretty far outweighed from sort of a worst case scenario. I think the restrictions on the size of the building and the fact that they would obviously still have to comply with all the regular zoning bylaws and building code, that would sort of mitigate the risk of sort of a nightmare scenario, that it's better to sort of lump in all these people that might have existing structures that they'd like to be able to convert to a single unit apartment.
Right, again, I guess what, I'm not so much looking at the individual owner, I'm looking at, do people take this, and if, as, I know like Salem's been on the ordinance for a long time, if an ordinance isn't very structured, people can take the ordinance and run with it. I mean, I know what you're saying is your concern, and I know there's a special permitting process that would go on with it, but I mean, if it's not clearly spelled out, who knows?
So you're saying what is clearly
What is clearly spelled out? Can you put it in the backyard if it's close to your back of your house or the side? I mean, it doesn't really spell it out here. And how about separate utilities? Would they have to tap into the sewer or the water? Would that be a separate tap in? Again, that wasn't really addressed in the ordinance either, where if it's in the house, you're bringing the service into the house and it's up to the person in that house to use. But if you're building a separate little ranch house, and again, I don't want to really make it sound like ranch because 800 square feet is pretty small.
Yeah.
But you could get 2 small bedroom. Do you have to bring a separate sewer system in, or water system, electrical hookups? I mean, again,
It would
depends.
have to meet Board of Health regulations, so
Yeah.
it still needs to meet Board of Health, it still needs to meet building code, and it would still need to meet the setbacks. So when you're talking about putting a building in the back of a property, as long as they're abiding by the setback requirements, then they're legally in the zoning. And the square footage is based on the primary house.
Right, I understand that. And I do agree 100% with the size, if they'll go into a third from a tenth. I think that was a good thing. I guess I just can see, I can dream up, I guess if I could sit here, I could dream up all sorts of ways of, and there's people and, builders and stuff, and I'm not picking up builders or developers that are gonna maybe use this to their advantage. And I know they have to live on site, so it wouldn't be like they could do it wholesale and buy several things. But anyway, just a few comments.
Under 8.55, transfer ownership of a dwelling with an accessory apartment, under B. It says minor changes may be approved that I hear. Now, what's a minor change? I think we should do
This is mine from city council.
Public don't have a list of something.
Yes.
A minor change for somebody, maybe a major change to somebody else. So there's no really, there should be something more,
better.
clarity, I think. What's a minor change? It's kind of a big deal. I think we should, Somehow get a little more handle on that.
Well, I don't really want to list the things that somebody can do without a hearing, but
I mean, it's no big deal, but, you know, somebody could come in here and come to revamp the whole place and say, well, it's only a minor change. Who's gonna say what it is and what it isn't? No, it doesn't say for sure.
Would that be the written request of the zoning board of appeals? That they might approve minor
Yeah, you know,
changes?
yeah, something like that, if you, yeah.
I think that they're supposed to get approval from the zoning board for everything, but minor changes can be approved without the hearing.
So they might not have to actually have a hearing, but they can have the zoning board approve it.
Right. Sort of administratively.
I mean, what is an example of a minor change?
Like there were 2 owners on the deed and then there's only 1 owner on the deed or something like that?
Are we talking about the structure?
I think it's changed to the unit, so I don't know if you
You could
repaint or
maybe-
something.
you could
yes.
maybe
Yeah,
go-
put in the windows, yeah.
Maybe say something on, and this, I'm just tossing this out there, no more than 5% modification of the structure. It's a little bit more specific, but still pretty nebulous.
Yeah, I mean, you could paint 100% of the structure, and it's still pretty minor. I mean, I think that as it's written, you're supposed to get approval from the zoning board.
They just strike it in.
Well, as long as they got it, you know, that's okay, that's fine. As long as I got to see somebody.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to have a hearing if the zoning board determines that it's minor. I mean, it's basically gonna be ZBA discretion, I guess.
I think a point of clarification too, if someone wanted to do this, they'd have to get a special permit
Correct, yeah.
from you guys.
Right.
Or, no.
From the
No,
ZBA.
ZBA.
This is all ZBA,
Okay.
everything's under the ZBA.
And what kind of information would they have to provide to the ZBA?
Um,
Would they have to have like plans? Yes.
Yeah.
Plans, parking, outdoor lighting, you know, if they're going to do anything like that. I think parking is probably one of the bigger things that they're wanting to look at, how many cars, where are they gonna be parked, style of it, how does it fit in with the existing neighborhood, is it detrimental in any way, shape, or form?
And it has to be, the owners have to live on the property, right?
Correct.
Right. Anything else?
I just want to say, as a sociologist, the implications for allowing someone to stay within their residence for a longer period of time with the addition of an accessory apartment and the changing demographics of families where it's more likely that we have adult children living in home, that I think this really makes sense for the realities that our city is facing right now.
Great. All right. Is there a motion?
Can I,
Yeah.
still open?
Sure.
There's no deed restriction on this, right? I mean, I know that a lot of it is talking about affordable housing, but we're not gonna increase our deed. This could be anybody, could be a millionaire
In
put in
order, I
there.
mean, there are some communities that do allow and encourage accessory apartments to be on the subsidized housing inventory, but the homeowner would need to have a fair housing marketing plan. They need to make sure that they're income eligible. There's a lot of hoops that need to be jumped through in order to make sure that the tenant is actually eligible to be in that unit, so.
I just-
They could, I mean, they could
Yeah, I just
certainly
didn't,
do it.
I didn't know, I was.
We wouldn't discourage it, but
Right.
they would need
It's
to
a-
be willing to take on the work that's associated with it.
Mr. Boyle?
Hi, sorry I missed the first part. I'm just asking for clarification on section G. When it says accessory apartment shall be clearly a subordinate part of a single-family dwelling, does that imply or preclude being a separate? Does it have to be attached to the house?
No.
Okay, thank you.
That's the second question we've had on that particular phrase. I anticipate we may get more in the future. I mean, maybe more should be done to isolate that phrase.
Well, I mean, it says it's gotta be a separate, complete separate housekeeping unit, that functions as a separate unit.
I mean, my take on it is that it is something that people will focus on, But with the ZBA reviewing this, the people there, as long as they know to focus on that and pay attention to it, that's enough. The question is whether they know.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, they'll have the bylaw, right, so they can do what they do with it. Anything else?
Well, can I ask Mr. Bullock a question?
Sure.
Dave,
Yeah,
in your professional opinion,
yeah.
if somebody to build a house like that or make a house, an apartment out of a garage or what have you, how do you think that would look upon it in a neighborhood? Do you think that would tear the value of the neighborhood down, or would you think it'd add to it, or how do you think that would work?
I think in general, I think it adds, but I mean, it really depends upon the quality of the project. I mean, if they're stuffing it in a old, leaning 3-car garage, that's one thing, but in general, I think it would add, because,
Well, again, it's not by right, they're still gonna have to go for a special permit from the ZBA.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
a man sells houses, so I'm just curious of what you thought about it.
So what do we want coming out of here? A motion to approve it as it stands? Did we pass that already?
What's that?
What do we want as a resolution from this?
We sent it to the full city council.
Just one quick thing. So, I think when we were looking at this, we had the thought that it would be detached. I'm just trying to find that it could be detached.
It could be detached.
That it could be detached.
Right.
But I'm just trying to find in here, because when you said the ZBA can read it,
So,
can you point me to the right spot where I can?
that is substantially contained within or accessory to a single-family dwelling in the general description.
Okay.
And then,
So it doesn't explicitly say that
no,
that
it
it can be
does, hold on.
detached. There. Just want to make sure.
Again, we're at the very beginning, 8.51.
It does say that in F, the same dimensional criteria shall apply to an accessory apartment constructed in an existing detached dwelling, such as a garage, barn, or carriage house, or to an accessory apartment constructed as part of a new detached dwelling.
Okay, that's about it. I knew it was there. I just couldn't find it. Very beautiful.
My motion to push this to the city council?
Okay. I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Sorry.
Let's take our-
Right. I move that we take the proposed amendments to the accessory apartment ordinance and move it to the full city council for consideration.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
He knows how to make a motion.
Yeah. All right, I guess, motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned.
Okay, close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, folks.
All right, so moving on, just real quickly take a look at the planning board meeting minutes from September 9th. Don't have a chance to look at that. Come on,
Motion to approve.
motion to approve, do a second. All in favor? Aye. Will you abstain? All right.
Wait a minute, hold on. No,
Yep, sorry, that was a quick one.
I'm trying to multitask.
Yeah.
Okay, so who made the motion?
Jim.
We're sticking with our Jim.
Jim Harry,
Second.
yeah. That seems to be working.
And it's 4-0.
No, 3 and 1 abstention.
Make the minutes easier if we stick to it.
Yes, it will.
All right. I guess can we put the A&R off and move on to
Sure,
the
that's
covenant?
fine,
All right, so,
absolutely.
new business with the covenant release for lot 7 of Julian Estates. So we're gonna speak on that?
I am.
How you
Hi.
doing?
My name is Adonis Kemp. I'm here on behalf of David Darsko, who is also here this evening. So we are looking for the partial release of the covenant. We're looking for a release of Lot 7. It is my understanding that all the work is done with the exception of just the top coat, the paving, the final paving, which has been delayed as a result of the weather. I believe that Jim Gracia, the city engineer, has submitted something in writing. I got an email from him that said
Yeah.
he understood that he gave a drop dead date of the 31st, but that he was fine with the lot being released.
I saw that. Any questions? Eric, Jim?
No,
Libby?
the exchange between them is being handled as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things I think we defer to Jim on and feel comfortable with it. That's okay with me.
So I just want to make sure that I'm following the sequence of events here. The first letter that I had from him was September 18th, where he was recommending that it was withheld until the definite commitment.
And that was after, or right in advance of our hearing before on this.
And then afterwards, we
Right, I provided you with a copy of the paving contract,
Yeah.
and then the email exchange between the applicant and
And the last
Jim,
one
and
was
then the
September
last one was
21st.
Jim's, which was on Thursday, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have all the communication.
Anybody else here to speak on this matter? All right. Motion?
I motion to release Lot 7 of the building estates on Hall Street.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right.
Fine.
All right.
Thanks. Can you rest tomorrow?
I can notarize it.
Oh.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
One-stop shop.
Do
Nancy?
you
All
want to
right.
try it one side, because I'll type it all in, do you want a copy of it?
I'd like a copy for my
Okay, and
file.
I'll deliver it for you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Well, hold on, I was gonna say, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question about this
Yeah,
kind of thing?
sure.
Going forward, is it, similar along the lines of possible to kind of streamline this whole process? In other words, Hall Street development comes to us, we approve the development and all that, okay? But the lots aren't released. Is it possible to streamline this whole thing and the only people that have released a lot to be yourself, the building inspector and the town engineer? So we wouldn't need a meeting.
Well,
Is that
but
possible?
but the planning board set the performance
Okay.
guarantee as part of your subdivision approval, so you're really the entity that has to release the guarantee. I mean, I can look into it and see if it's a possibility.
Well, the reason I say that, say for example, a guy comes before us the first of the month, and all of a sudden, like the 14th, like tonight, for example, and we can't make it, it's got a hurricane or something, or we're sick, we can't, so now it puts it up for another couple of weeks. So this stretches it out for almost a whole month.
Well, the reason that this got stretched out as a whole month
No,
is
I know,
because
I
they
know.
didn't give themselves enough
I
time for the
know.
approval process.
And even so, we're still helping them out by releasing the lots in
I know,
advance of
I know.
them finalizing the conditions.
I just wanted to get the streamline this thing, that's all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can certainly look into it, Harry, and see what other communities do if it's something that's a possibility, but right now, there's a performance guarantee. There are multiple different types of guarantees that a developer can choose. They can choose a bond, which is through the insurance company, because this applicant doesn't have enough experience. This is the first subdivision he's ever built. He doesn't have enough history in order to qualify for a bond. He could have gotten a letter of credit through the bank, or he could put up lots for, as his guarantee. It's his choice. The board has no authority to pick the financial guarantee. It's all the developer's choice. He chose to do the covenant of the lots. So because of that, there is a process. The form that was
right.
signed is in
Yeah.
our subdivision regulations. It's Form H, I think.
Okay.
So, the amount of the bond is set by the city engineer based on the conditions that the board says, this is what we want to see happen with this subdivision. We want, these are the certain infrastructure that needs to be put in place. And really all that the bond covers is, or the guarantee covers, is the public infrastructure. So say he just skips out of town, then we're able to have some ability to get some financial money to finish at least the road, so that we can have a road that meets our standards, or finish the water line, or whatever it is. It's the only teeth that we have in terms of making sure that it's built correctly, and that's why we rely so heavily on Jim Gracia, the city engineer, to notify us on whether all of the infrastructure is built to the city's specs. I mean, he really is the ultimate authority, so, you know, if there's a way we can streamline it as an administrative, there's a way to look into that, but I feel like in a way that since the board set the conditions for these subdivisions, the board should be the one that determines, with assistance from the city engineer,
Right.
that the development has been built to the standards that you are expecting from this developer. I think it's kind of the checks and balances that I think makes
It's a little
transparency
awkward
in
to delegate
government.
that, yeah.
So, but we can certainly look into it, and I can, you know, when I find some time, I can investigate and see what if other communities have a more administrative streamlined process. And whether it's just me reporting then to the board saying, this is what happened, and, you know. But he has other lots in that subdivision that have to go through Conservation Commission as well, so there's a lot of steps that need to happen, so.
All right, A&R for the city of East Hampton. Is that you, Jessica?
Yes, it is, hold on, I'm
All
just
right.
writing it down so I can put it up in minutes.
Now you're gonna have to do three jobs at once instead of just two.
Oh, yeah, okay. So this is for the Parsons Street School. The property is going to be sold by, see a little bit. There's going to be RFP'd out, sold to a private entity shortly, some point. So, hopefully by the end of the calendar year, I think is what the mayor's office is hoping. So the original parcel, the frontage hasn't changed.
Yeah.
This was one parcel. Based on city council vote, the back half is being split off and being reserved for municipal open space at some point, and the front half is gonna be sold to a private development. So we are just basically splitting the lot.
Libby, are you familiar with this process at all?
Not the process, but
You're familiar with the parcel?
yes.
Okay, so the A&R, it's approval not required, and it's basically, we just check, they wanna divide the lot, and all we look at really is the frontage, whether it meets the frontage requirements on a public way. So it doesn't say that they're buildable or they meet any other requirements, just that as they've drawn it up, they've made two lots that have the required frontage, and we sign off on it.
Right, okay, I did go over this briefly with.
There's a lot of
Jessica,
things
so-
here, but yeah.
And these two, and this is actually was a separate parcel, and now these two have been combined
They've been
into
combined,
one
okay.
parcel. So this is now combined, so this is a lot, and this is a lot.
Okay,
Okay?
and we have frontage on both sides
Both
that meets
sides.
the
Yep.
requirement.
Yep.
Okay.
I motion to, and this is always where, approve the approval. not
Endorse.
required.
Endorse.
The approval not required.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, all right. Which one do you need me to sign here, just this
The
Mylar one?
Mylar, and if you want to sign, this is part, one from my office, so these two are the hard copies. And it'll be just so you know, in some communities, everybody signs the plans, but in East Hampton, they made a motion 2 years ago that the chair is the only person that needs to endorse it, so.
Here we go, that's what I'm
So we'll just spend
I
20
think the one with the
minutes.
best handwriting.
No, that definitely didn't happen. So the 14th?
I noticed
Say
all
the
the rest of
chair.
us are lefties, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
All right, good luck.
You,
All right, no old business tonight. With the two requested planning board opinions from the ZBA. I don't know if anybody looked at these.
so I have, so the application for 28 Holyoke Street, The application was denied by the ZBA.
Oh, it already happened?
It happened on Thursday.
Okay.
The 124 Northampton Street, there was discussion, but the public hearing is still open, it's not closed yet.
Okay. So, Libby, to explain what we've done in the past recently is that these are sort of, under the bylaws, they're required to send out notice to various boards in the city. We are one of them. And it gives us an opportunity to weigh in on this stuff, but our sort of recent approach has been that we just have the paper application, and a lot of it is discretionary for the ZBA, and it's easier to simply defer to that board, although that's certainly not a formal policy or prohibition on speaking out on it. But
In general, they'd know more about what's going on in the event than we would, so I mean.
you
let them-
might see something in the application that, piques your interest or something, but if you don't have the applicant there to ask questions, they're not prepared for the hearing.
I have the file on 124 Northampton Street if anybody wants to take a look at it. I will note that it was
That's been going on for a long time. That's been going on for a long time, doesn't it?
that's the first time I know of it. I understand it was a pretty lively discussion.
Is that where they don't they want to put a sign up for the car washes or something?
They want to change it to an electronic messaging.
That was
sign.
separate.
That was a different one.
So,
What is the definition of an electronic messaging?
well, that's why you need to go to your zoning ordinance, and there's a lot of disagreement, I would say, between the ZBA and the building inspector on how things are being defined, and in summary, from what I understand and what my review, I was not in attendance of the meeting, but what the assistant planner briefed me on, and there's a copy of the minutes from the meeting if you're interested, but the planning board essentially said, in their opinion, the way that they interpret the zoning ordinance is they thought because it was a hand mechanical system rather than electronic messaging, which is
Yeah.
actually technically prohibited in the zoning, that they thought that the applicant just needed to get permission from the building inspector. The building inspector, whose comments are also in that file, disagrees and says that he believes it's just not permitted at all. So there's a bit of an interpretation issue going on right now. So even if you don't comment on this, I think you need to be aware that I would presume that there will probably be some ordinance changes to the signage section based on some interpretation questions, and I'll also note that in my opinion, this is not the only section of that zoning ordinance that has interpretation issues. It is a very complicated section of the ordinance, and I think there's a lot of confusion in there that we have debates internally all the time on how we interpret that section. So, so it's up to you on whether you want to comment or not, but I will note that this hearing is still open, and the planning board is, if you want to comment on the zoning aspect of it, I mean, whatever you want to do. I'm just trying to brief you on sort of the background and the history of since what happened on Thursday.
Harry's shaking his head in frowning. He doesn't want to get on the spot, but what do you think?
It's a dirty mess. If I had any recommendations for them, I would say trust your city engineer.
Well, he's
It's not
not
the
involved in
city
this
engineer.
one. Building inspector and zoning board.
Yeah, let them hash it out. That's their job, right?
But yeah, okay. Ready to make a motion to take no action on this then?
I second. Or make the motion, we can't give the chair.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Administrative items. Nominate a temporary vice chair.
So as we all know, Chet unfortunately had an accident, and will be out for at least a couple months, Harry, is that?
Yeah.
That's too bad.
And he has been our vice chair, so when Jesse's usually here, but on occasion he cannot make it. And if there's, say, an A&R or some other business, or somebody needs to sort of run the meeting when Jesse's not here, and so somebody needs to be a temporary vice chair while Chet is out.
I don't want to be a temporary.
Oh, that's quick, Harry. You beat him. That's
You have
fast.
seniority, are you sure?
I'm positive.
I would like to nominate James Zarvis as the vice chair in Chet's
Well, that sounds
absence.
great to me. That sounds
Is that a
great.
second?
Not a second, but yes.
Libby, unless you'd like to throw your hat in the ring here? It's probably, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I have to
You're abstaining? Okay.
I can't
All right.
myself, so.
Wait a minute, hold on, Jesse, you made the motion,
I made the motion.
Harry second.
Don't ever do.
I didn't step that fast.
Yeah, no, Harry was quick on that one.
Okay, and Jim abstained. Okay,
Uh,
got it.
did you have something you wanted to say about the CPTC training here,
I
Jess?
just want you to all know that there are sessions that are available for you to attend. I've highlighted a couple. Wait, where's my cheat sheet? There was one in Northampton that I think was canceled anyway. There's a site plan review one on the 21st in Greenfield. There's a special permit and variances one on the 28th and also in Greenfield. And there's tons of other ones in other parts of the state, but those are the ones that are the closest. There's also reading a subdivision plan on December 18th in Pittsfield, if anybody feels compelled to do that, although we don't have any subdivisions coming down the pike that I'm aware of anytime soon. But they're $30. The city will pay for you to go. If you feel like you might need some,
I
like,
highly
more
recommend them. They're really
basic
good.
understanding
Very
of
informative.
site plan review, what that process is, and special permits and variances. I'm looking more at you, Libby, than
Yeah, of course.
anybody else, I think, but you just need to fill out the paperwork and work with the planning department, and we'll put the purchase order in, and you can go on the city will pay for it.
Great. I just have to check my calendar and see.
Okay, why don't you take that?
Thank you.
Okay,
Those
awesome.
classes are really good, by the way.
They're really good.
Excellent.
Be nice if they were in East Hampton, but.
But yeah, we
We
go
don't
to
have a
Worcester
planning commission
occasionally.
here. What's
And-
that?
We go to Worcester occasionally.
Yeah. Any other administrative items, Jess?
No, that's it.
All right. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Sorry, I
Aye.
spaced. Jim.
It was Jim, and then Harry said
I
curveball.
know it's a little different, yeah.
All right, all in favor, did we get that? Everyone voted? Aye, yeah.
What time is it?
It was 6:36.
Wow. Can you turn off the thing?
Yeah,